Welcome to Inspired by Faith, a program of the Columbus Catholic Women's Conference. I'm Emily Jaminet, and I'm joined each program in studio with my friend, Michelle Fanley. This is a show to help you to be inspired by your Catholic faith, live out the gospel message, and deepen your relationship with Jesus Christ. We hope this show provides you an uplifting 30 minutes to help refresh your soul and strengthen your faith. As it was born out of our friendship, we hope it encourages you to deepen and develop spiritual friendships with your sisters in Christ. Hello, Michelle.
Hello, Emily. It's so great to be here.
It is great to be here, isn't it? Whenever we get in studio, it just feels like the rest of the world's out there and we get to focus on some very meeting some inspiring people, talking about these important topics such as our dignity and worth.
And today we have a returning guest, which is awesome. It doesn't happen very often on Inspired by Faith, but sometimes we are super blessed to have people on as the second guest because she's coming to town here.
Yeah. You know what? That's the best part is that we don't follow necessarily a rule book, right?
That's right.
This is a fun way to do it. Well, I can't wait to tell you about our guest coming up today. Carrie Schuchts Daunt is a presenter for the John Paul II Healing Center, an Undone and Unveiled retreats. She is the author of Undone, Freeing Your Feminine Heart from the Knots of Fear and Shame, and she's the co-author of Man Your Post, Learning to Lead Like St. Joseph with her husband. Carrie's the mother of 8 children and the daughter of Dr. Bob Schuchts, an author and well-known just presenter to all of us. So thank you so much, Carrie, for being here. We're very excited that you are coming back to Ohio. Is that true?
Yes, it's true. I'm so excited to be able to see you ladies in person. It's such a treat. And I just realized I need to update my bio, Emily. It says 8 children, and I got surprised with my beautiful 9th baby this year. So
I love that. I was going to say 9, and then I was like, you know what? See, that's the fun thing is when you have a big family, you don't want to, push someone to the next number. But at the same time, I was a little bit thinking about that because you are the mama of 9.
Yes, yeah, I sure am.
That's awesome. One thing about Inspired by Faith is that Michelle and I have been so inspired by other people and what God has done in their life. And as a result, we want to introduce these, wonderful guests to them. And so maybe could you share a little bit about your faith journey and what the Lord's done in your own life?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't know if there's any one specific thing, but, growing up grew up in a Catholic family. Many people know my dad, Dr. Bob Schuchts. So really had a beautiful, upbringing in the sense of, watching all the things that my dad was doing and fostering in the faith community and working with priests and religious and having that exposure at such an early age was very valuable. But I would say that my own faith journey, as wonderful it is to have grown up in that environment, was really a series of probably deeper conversions over the years, really in my early adult life. And I think probably one of the most remarkable was a theology of the body class that I took in 2004 with a dear friend. And this particular class, it was the first time that I'd ever heard this teaching. And I had 3 small children. We were living and doing all of the things that the church said we needed to do when we took our marriage prep. We were checking all the Catholic boxes, but I had such growing up in the public school system, and it's wonderful. Schools have so many different options, but I lived very much in a worldly environment. As much as we went to church on Sunday, so much of my formation came from my peers, and I just was duped by so many things in the world, and had all of these ideas of what I thought it meant to be a human person. And listening in this class, something in my heart just began to awaken. And over the course of another year or so, this huge paradigm shift happened in my heart. And probably one of the most, one of those aha moments of my faith came actually around this time when I found out I was expecting my 4th baby in 5 years. And it was one of those, we were not ready and we were kind of freaking out and we were already way over our head. And I really felt like the Lord was inviting me to see something different or to notice something different. So I did what any good Catholic mom did. I ran to adoration, just fell on the floor weeping, Lord, how am I going to be more to more people? I just am so at the end of myself here, and, just trying to bring it to him. And while I was in adoration, and this is a funny story, but when I was in adoration, I felt like the Lord was just not only offering me a little bit of consolation in these few minutes with him, but showed me this picture as I was praying. And this picture is really quite hilarious. It was a picture of really large, like, granny panties, like underwear. I was like, Lord, what is this? Is this a vision from you? Like, this seems really strange. And then I heard the words, you're going to be stretched. You're going to be stretched. And I just really had this sense of, like, a yes to the Lord in this season. Like, I don't know what this looks like, but I'm going to give my yes, despite all of the unknowns and all of the fears. And, my husband really working hard, trying to make ends meet at that point and providing for our family. And we had this house that we were building, and it wasn't done, but our house that we were living in got sold quicker than we were ready to move. And so we moved in with my parents, and my husband was working 80-hour weeks. And it was just a really, really difficult season. And then we had this sweet baby. And after we had him, he was extremely colicky, and I'd never had a colicky baby. And I was like, okay, Lord, like, I'm giving you my yeses. Like, show me where you are in all of this. And after about 4 months, I remember one night nursing him, and he was one of those babies that would just nurse and nurse and nurse. And I was sitting in the rocking chair, and he looked at me with these big blue eyes and just smiled this, like, smile that completely melted my heart. And as I was looking down at him, these words came out of my mouth that surprised me, and they were like, this is my body given up for you. And in that moment, I just had this realization of just the wonderful, beautiful dignity of my femininity and, like, this awesome opportunity to nurture life and, like, whatever realm or capacity that the Lord gives us as people in front of us, that I'm made for relationship. Like, I'm a part of his image and likeness in this communion of persons. And it all seems very deep in this flash of a moment, but really from that moment, my heart just began to, like, become inflamed with the love of the Lord and, like, this deep desire for communion and community, and just really being able to see our faith not so much through the lens of boxes to check, but, like, the passion that the Lord gives us for his people, and just the privilege of participating with him in creation and in relationship and in love. I know that's kind of a long answer to all of it, but I really feel like that's kind of one of the pivotal moments of my own faith journey that's really kind of been a propellant of what he has called me to since, and just where I've been living.
And now you've dedicated your whole life to helping women heal. So can you tell us how you even, obviously it's probably from your father, right? His ministry, but
Right.
How did you feel called to, and why do women need healing?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think we all need healing. So often, I think people talk about healing in different camps on healing. Like, maybe it's navel gazing, like, why we're all going to, go to heaven, or hopefully, or we're all going to die one day. Like, why do we need to be healed along the way? And, for me, one of the best ways that the Lord illustrated this point to me was a year and a half ago. I ended up breaking my arm when I took my children skating. And one of those moments of humility, the guy at the counter was like, I really think that people your age should wear wrists, and me,
Braces.
whatever.
Yes, guards.
Right. And I was like, no, I'm good. I can totally skate. Well, I definitely ate my words and ate the ground as I fell and broke the fall with my wrist, and broke it in several places. And immediately after I broke it, I knew it was broken. Like, I could just feel it. And then I lifted it up, and it was totally deformed, kind of dangling there. And I was trying, like, to play it cool so my kids didn't freak out for a second. But my body started to react. It, like, started to shake. And immediately people started just coming. Like, immediately they were surrounding me. Then I was taken to the hospital. And then at the hospital, they immediately reset my arm. And everybody was responding. They called the orthopedic surgeon. They scheduled surgery. And I think what this particular incident showed me was that our trauma, the places of our woundedness in our lives, need a response. But so often the places in our hearts, especially as women, because we've got to be all to all, we have to be the person who takes on all of the responsibility. We're at the center of relationships, that sometimes we forget that there are places in our hearts and our lives that haven't been tended to, these big gaping wounds that are still inflamed or infected, and we're trying our best to protect these places, but we're walking around wounded. And every time someone bumps into it, we wonder why our reaction, our response isn't at the same level as the situation. And it's because we're being hit or triggered in these places where we're hurt, where we're in deep pain. And I think each of us have these places in our lives. And the truth of the matter is no one would left me at the skating ring with my broken arm to suffer. But that's how often these things in our hearts that happen, we've never talked about them with people. We've never expressed them, or no one's even asked us, maybe we were a child, what's going on, what happened. And in those places, what I've seen is that when we have a response to our trauma, when we have a response to our woundedness, just like when we go to the doctor and we have healing, then there's more hope. We're not walking around in pain and not carrying the same level of compensation as we're trying to aid our little arm or our leg or our limp along in life.
And this is what you've given your life to, giving these retreats and talks about healing. And that is what you're coming here for in at Columbus in St. Francis de Sales in January. You're doing a 3-day retreat titled Undone. So can you tell us a little bit about what this retreat is all about and who should attend?
Oh, yeah. It is really just an honor to be able to come and to be a part and to come up to Ohio and do these conferences. We travel around the country several times a year doing these conferences, these retreats with women, and really the process of this retreat is a few different layers, but really it's an understanding of who we are and who we're created to be as women, and where are the places. It's all based on this knot of Eve's disobedience, the place in which in the fall, where she was created, for this beautiful image and likeness of God. But then in the fall, how the distortions of femininity began to take place, this grasping, controlling, trying to decide independently of God. It's so often how we live our lives in our fallen nature. And being able to look at it through the lens of how are we wounded as women and how do we live out of those places of protection through these lies, through these places of judgment. And then how Mary, in her model of beauty and receptivity and relationship, shows us how to live in an authentic feminine posture. What does it look like to be a woman? What does it look like to be receptive, to be open, to say yes to God, whatever He's calling us to do, in whatever season in our life, whatever role that we are, whatever vocation, whether it's daughters or sisters or brides or mothers, how do we live in that posture of fiat? How do we live in that posture of offering ourselves, as she did, to be a vessel of the Holy Spirit, to bring life, to bring Jesus to others?
Wow. Carrie, I'm so excited that you're going to be coming to give this retreat Undone January 25th through the 27th at St. Francis de Sales in Newark. And, as we started this interview, we're talking about the undone, we're talking about healing. You gave such a simple but powerful example, something that happened in your own heart, right? You were afraid in that moment, but you went to the Lord and asked for grace and strength. And now you're willing to share your story. And I think it makes me think about, how many of our sisters in Christ are carrying some very heavy bricks on their back, or we could say bricks on their heart, and the Lord doesn't want us to be that way, including ourselves. So we all can, be better Catholics, better moms, better daughters, better sisters by getting that healing and setting aside some time. So I think, what words do you have for maybe someone who's on the fence, never done anything like this, didn't think that they have any issues, but I loved your idea of trauma and, not attending to it and what happens. So what words do you have?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say that anybody's welcome, no matter what season or stage of your life. It really is a retreat. We've had, 18-year-olds, fresh out of high school girls, and 88-year-old women, have said, that is deeply touched and has been life-changing and transforming. So I just want to say, that there is no exclusion. You don't have to have a certain, Catholic card to be able to get in. This really is a retreat for all women. But I to speak to the hesitancy, one thing that really spoke to me, and I've heard Sister Miriam say this several times too, who, as many of you know, is a part of the John Paul II Healing Ministry, but she talks about this idea that whatever isn't transformed in our own heart is often transmitted. So the things that we haven't tended to, like, we inadvertently pass on to the people that we love the most. And so, sometimes I think for ourselves, we're like, oh, I can walk around in pain. I can endure this for the rest of my life or forever long, that the Lord's asking me to carry this cross. And sometimes we call these crosses, and sometimes they are, definitely we're called to this place of redemptive suffering as Catholics, as Christians. But oftentimes it's our own unwillingness to look at things, to really like evaluate where we are in our hearts with these things that is keeping us from receiving some of the deep healing that the Lord wants to do in our hearts, because he loves us and he wants us whole so that we can love the people in our lives better. And so I know for me, a big part of my desire for deeper healing was to be the better sister and daughter and bride and mother and in each of the places that the Lord has called me, and my places of even a spiritual motherhood. And we know we have a lot of women who come to our conferences who are like, well, I've never had children. But the truth of it is that each of us as women are called to bring life to others. We're so relational. And one of the beautiful aspects of this retreat that I continue to be amazed at is just the importance of sharing other women's stories. And so a lot of what we share at the conference is very open, vulnerable parts of our own stories. And so as the women break out into small groups or have opportunities to journal or opportunities to connect with other women, like seeing relationships being not only mended but formed, Christ-centered relationships, almost like the visitation with Mary and Elizabeth, because that's really the heart of what we need as women is to have these beautiful Christ-centered connections. My hope is that anyone who feels on the fence, that they'll just be encouraged, to come and to just give your yes to the Lord, because he wants to work in any small gesture of fiat to do big things in our hearts.
You're listening to Inspired by Faith, the program of the Columbus Catholic Women's Conference. I'm Emily Jaminet, and I'm here in studio with Michelle Fanley. And today we're talking with Carrie Schuchts, Daunt, about this idea of the importance of our dignity, being the Undone retreat coming up. And, Carrie also has a really fun children's book I want to say fun, beautiful, meaning, touching children's book that is, Carrie, is it officially out, or is it, where are you?
In January. So I'll have it at the conference for you guys. But yeah, we had a little bit of a delay, but it's coming in, so we'll have it out in the stores in January.
Perfect. And it's called The Beloved Daughter. And I'm telling you, I'm so grateful that you tackled such an important topic for us to not only, talk about healing our hearts, but making sure the messaging to our daughters and the next generation is set, on God's plan and really focused on using words and language that builds them up in the way the Lord would want. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about, where this idea of this book came about and, what your thoughts are.
Yeah. So Beloved Daughter was really birthed out of these conferences that I've been doing with women. So these women will have these transformative experiences where they finally are able to hear some of the truth of their goodness, of their identity as women. Like as we, go through the process of the weekend and renounce some of the lies that they believed about who they are and who they were, who other people have told them that they are, who the lies whispered by Satan, like he did to Eve in the garden. And when she begins to register with the truth of her goodness, like one of the immediate questions that I get over and over again at these conferences was, how do I get this message to my daughter? How do I speak this truth to my daughter? How do I help her to avoid some of the lies that I fell so prey to? And so one morning I just woke up, I was praying, before I went to bed, and woke up in the morning and just really had the sense the Lord just like laid it out. It's just these beautiful proclamations, this book of different places of our identity, that you're chosen, that you're loved, that you're seen, that you're known. And each of these like proclamations are meant for the parents, godparents, grandparents to be read to the little girls in your life, to speak the truth over her. And each of these different proclamations are accompanied by scripture verses, the word of God living and, dwelling in us and through us, just proclaimed over her as well. So, and, I read it to my own girls as soon as I was able to mock up a little book, and I just saw the look on their sweet little faces. Like, it's one thing to hear it, but it's another thing to hear it spoken over you as you're snuggle close with people in your lives who already love you. And I think as parents sometimes, I know even for my own kids, like, I know this truth, I speak this truth at conferences, but sometimes it's a hard thing just to bust out with your kids while you're, eating breakfast in the morning. But it really gives you that opportunity to make sure these truths are something that is spoken over them and to them in such a tender way. And this illustrator, this wonderful Catholic illustrator, Michael Corsini, partnered with me to come up with the illustrations for this book, and they're actually just incredibly exquisite. Like, he did such a great job capturing these beautiful scenes, which I think in itself are like a visio divina, like this beautiful encounter with truth through the pictures as well, as these girls look at these different images.
It's absolutely beautiful. I loved reading through it. And even just reading it yourself, like, you imagine God saying this to you. And I think that's something we as women don't do very often. And just imagine God whispering these words to you that you are loved. And I think that was a beautiful gift. So thank you for, sharing that and writing that. And, you've also written a book for women based off this retreat, correct? It's also called Undone?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. It's also Undone, Freeing Your Feminine Heart from the Knots of Fear and Shame. And this book is actually a collection of different women's stories. They're very vulnerable stories, very raw, redemptive stories of how the knots of even their own hearts became undone through their own little yeses. So it's along the same theme, but really just for me, I think a big part of my conversion story that I didn't mention was the ability of other women to be vulnerable with me. It really touched my heart, like, in a deep way, because I think in our Instagram society, we have this illusion that everybody else has it all together, that everyone's got their stuff together, they got it all right. They show up at Mass and everyone looks dressed and have their shoes. Unlike my family, we sometimes forget our shoes for Mass. But really the truth of it is that each of us have those own places in our stories, our own junk drawers or closets or basements or garages full of things that we'd rather not everybody know. But when women were allowed me into the closets of their hearts and to be able to share some of the deep places of their story, it gave me permission to go to those places in my own heart. And so that was the intent of the book Undone, was just to allow other women to realize they're not alone. And that was one thing too, Michelle, that I noticed when I do prayer ministry with women. It's almost every woman who I ever prayed with would say, I'm the only person who ever felt this way. And I thought, how remarkable it is that every woman feels that way. But the truth of it is it's a lie from the enemy, that we're not alone, that we all feel this way, that we all feel some sort of shame about something that's happened in our life, that we all feel fear about something that's happened in our life, that we all feel a sense of rejection at some point. And while each of us have different experiences of that, our stories are not the same. But the tactic of the enemy to target us in these places over and over again by keeping us hidden is really where he has, I feel like in particular, come after women. And so I think the desire is that vulnerability. How do we share ourselves and our stories, and how do our stories touch and give other people permission to walk into theirs?
Wow, Carrie, we're so excited that you are going to be here in January. And you're talking about your kids not bringing shoes. In January, you always bring your shoes. I mean, that's a fact. And you live in Florida, so, you kind of highlighted our remember, you got to always have your shoes in Ohio in January. But, one of the things I would love for our listeners to connect with you, maybe let them know how they can first sign up for the retreat, where they can, get this new book, Beloved Daughter. You are loved, you are accepted, you are good. It's so fabulous. And even some of your other resources as well.
Yeah, all of it can be found at our website for the Healing Center, the John Paul II Healing Center.org. It's JPIIHealingCenter.org. www.jpiihealingcenter.org. And on our events calendar, you can find all the details for the retreat, where to register. We also have scholarships available if that's an impediment. We don't ever want anybody to feel excluded from that based on any circumstances. We also have those for religious sisters. We it's a fun thing. We usually have several religious sisters, depending on how many orders are around that are attending our events. And then in addition to that, on our store link, you'll be able to find both Man Your Post and Undone. And I heard in the next week or two, Beloved Daughter will be put up. I think we just aren't able to do that pre-order at this point just because the books aren't in yet and we can't guarantee them. But it will be up, at least showing coming soon. But in January, it should be available on there and on Amazon and in other outlets as well.
Wonderful. Well, and remember, Valentine's Day, what better messaging than to send your daughters that they are loved by not only us, but God the Father. So thank you so much, Carrie, for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I'm really excited about being in your neck of the woods there. And my real joy would be able to see both of you and any of the women in that community. It feels like home in so many ways by all of your guys' love and how much you've welcomed our ministry to that area.
We love it. We can't wait to see you here in Columbus, January 25th through 27th at St. Francis de Sales in Newark. And it's also being live streamed, correct?
Yeah. So if you can't attend in person or maybe you want to register in person, you also get a live stream link if you register. So maybe you can't make it on Thursday night, but you can make it Friday and Saturday. Once you register in person, you can get both, or you can just register live stream. It's a different price, but the videos of the conference will be available, I think, for 2 weeks for you to view and watch.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us on Inspired by Faith. We hope that you are blessed by Inspired by Faith by this episode. To find out more about the Columbus Catholic Women's Conference, visit columbuscatholicwomen.com. And to hear more about our work, please check out inspiredthefaith.com.